Hi and welcome back. Today I'll be trying to paint a waterfall, and here this is the one that I ended up with. I'm quite pleased with it in the end, but I'm not going to say that I found it easy. To be honest, it was quite a struggle. I had tried quite a lot of attempts before this and I just didn't really get anywhere with it. It's a very hard thing to paint. Well, for me anyway. Give me a boat anytime. Right, I'm going to use a limited palette for this, so I'm starting off with just quite a neutral grey sky. I'm using very diluted lamp black just to faintly colour the sky, and then slightly stronger lamp black because I'm going to try and roughly and loosely roughly and loosely get in the shapes of the rocky sides of the waterfall, or other big rock outcrops through which I intend the waterfall to pour. I'm going to try and be quite loose and blocky and with my strokes, and as you can see I'm using the flat brush again, the 3/4 inch Winsor & Newton synthetic flat. I actually use this for the whole painting apart from the trees at the end. I'm finding that the shapes that the flat brush gives me help me to build up the rocky sides more convincingly for this, rather than chopping and changing with different brushes. Now I'm going to introduce a little bit more colour into these very loose shapes, and this is indigo. I'm still keeping the colours quite pale, and I've blocked off where I want the rocks to stop and the water pool or the lake or whatever to begin. Now there's some raw sienna just being added in. I don't care where I'm putting it, I'm just making the marks quite spontaneously and loosely, and that's, there's no real intention there of brush strokes. It's just literally to try and suggest the rocky forms without trying to paint each tiny part of it. It's amazing that if you do let yourself go and loosen up, you can actually find that shapes like this start to look convincing, even if they look a bit rough to start with. Right, I'm going to get some darks in, much thicker, almost tube consistency of the lamp black, top and bottom, just to try and give me some idea of excuse me, how the three-dimensionalness of the rocks is starting to look. I want them to be in deep shadow at the base, which I think will contrast nicely with the water of the waterfall, which I've left, as you can see at the moment, a big gap. What I'm going to try and do is leave as much white paper there as possible for the spray and the splashing of the water. If it doesn't work out, then I could always go in with some white watercolour or some white gouache at the end. Alright, just going to mix up some more lamp black, squeeze out some more into the palette because I've almost run out, and get this other side nice and dark at the bottom. It's starting to make a bit more sense to me at the moment. I can see where I can go with this. I mean, it's going to need some rocks around the bottom and water, and quite a bit more shaping to these side rocks, and then of course the waterfall, but I'll leave the waterfall until I'm happy with these rocks. There's some dry brush and there's some wet brush there. You can see there's horizontal strokes, diagonal strokes, dabs, pulls. Some of it's running wet into wet, other parts of it, the paper is dry. So we're building up quite a variety of textures without really trying. As I say, this is part of what you can do with loose painting, is there's a certain amount of freedom in being able to express yourself like that, but it's not easy to do. It took me a long time, and just with it happening accidentally, for me to realise that sometimes it's easier just to paint in, you know, rough, big, blocky shapes and strange brush marks, and you actually end up with quite an exciting result. Not every time, but again, my mantra, what I always say is, with practice and of course experimentation, you'll learn so much and you'll find out sort of how far you can go with this sort of thing. Right, the rocks need to come in now, because I think I need to get a better, stronger idea of how the water's going to look around those rocks and around the base of the waterfall, so I can see whether it's working yet or not, or beginning to work. So keeping some nice flat bottoms to those rocks as well. Now I'm just going to put, I was going to say clean water, but it's not, it's quite dirty now because of the amount of lamp black that I've used, but that's giving me some streaks, vertical streaks down the waterfall, in very pale grey, so it's quite good because I can see it and you can see it more easily as well. And now a little bit of indigo, I'm introducing it from the top and maybe encouraging it down a little bit with the flat brush, but I only want to have it coming down, the blue to come down in streaks, not too overt, if you know what I mean. Well, I'm thinking about what to do about the waterfall. I'm just going to put some more water into there and sort of just dibs and dabs, very pale dibs and dabs here and there, to kind of get the impression, or attempt to get the impression of the splashing water as it hits the pool. Just get some more water in, horizontal sweeps and strokes with the tips of the flat brush, and more indigo. Slightly darker marks in there. Starting to actually look like a waterfall now. At this point it sort of comes down to now sort of balancing tones and colours. I think we need a bit more blue in the waterfall, just a little bit more shape to it. We'll do that by just feeding in some bit more indigo to the top. I think I want to try and see if I can get it to flow down and straighten the top, so I'm going to pull the flat brush and then pull it round and down. I didn't quite go down far enough with that, but I'm just going to encourage it down again carefully and gently. A few more sort of using the corner of the flat brush, tiny little dots and marks, just as randomly positioned as possible, just again to indicate the foam and the splashing as the water tumbles from the waterfall down into the pool. Now this is very, very, very pale watery grey from the lamp black, just to add a little bit of variety to the colour of the water that's cascading down. Some of those dots and bits and bobs that I put are still a bit damp, so now I'm just going to sort of muddle them up a bit so they look even more random. Get the very strong lamp black again and just keep darkening up that base so it really is in shadow, the base of the rocks there. Again, the contrast or counter change between the very pale water and the base of the rocks that are in shadow really helps to lift the painting. Now I'm just going to put in excuse me, more of these random dark marks across the rock face, just where I think it needs it, and especially around the edges, again next to the waterfall, so that we've got some nice contrast, and hopefully the suggestions of those wet rocky plains. I think this is going to be the do or die really, because if the trees go in the top and look okay, then I think we're more or less got our waterfall. Just using the ruler. First time I've changed from the flat brush. Just loosely putting in some skeletons of trees. I'm not too fussed about detail here or accuracy. I just want them, because I just want them to sort of be a framing device for the waterfall, so to speak. Getting some real dark in at the base of the trees and trying to use the flat of the brush to pull down, so that rather than having grass there, it's like the trees are growing out of the rocky outcrops and the soil that's gathered in the cracks between the rocks. And I actually really like the blocky look of the top, how that worked out. I shall be remembering that and using that in future paintings. Well, we're nearly there now. Just going to do this side again with the flat brush to create that sort of the tops of the rock, which I think is quite effective actually. I'm pleased with that. I think that just finishes it off. So if we look more closely, we can just see the marks that create that splash pool. I could have maybe done a bit more with the waterfall, but I didn't want to overdo it. In your painting, of course, you could put more of sort of vertical flow marks down, but I'm very, very pleased with the rocks. And here it is with a frame, with a mount around it, because it looks a lot better when you can actually see the painting as it's meant to be seen, rather than just sort of a vignette plonked in the middle of a larger piece of paper. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll give it a go. And I shall certainly be trying it again, because I was very pleased with how this one went after the number of failures that I had. So thanks very much. I'll be back again next week with some more painting and drawing videos, and I'll see you soon. Take care then. Bye.